Welcome to Tejal KHANDELWAL Study Center. Today's topic is Western political thought, Hannah Arendt. So let's revise Hannah Arendt together. Hannah Arendt is a 20th century philosopher. She was born in a German Jewish family and then migrated to the USA. According to her, there are two twin horrors that are unprecedented in the 20th century. And they are Nazism and Stalinism. She says that none of the earlier perspectives are able to offer an understanding of these two unprecedented phenomena in the history of mankind. So, there is need for a completely new and fresh perspective to understand politics and political life. Thus, she attaches subjectivity in a lot of new concepts and new interpretations she provides to the existing concepts. She calls her thinking as thinking without barriers. She is also known as a Cold War intellectual. Now let's move towards decoding Hannah Arendt. In the works Origin of Totalitarianism, she criticizes the two horrors of the 20th century, that is Stalinism and Nazism. In the work on human condition, she talks about the modernity and how it has brought the loss of the world. And because there is loss of the world and rise of the private sphere over the political sphere or the public life, there is degradation of participation of politics, which needs to be revived again. So, according to her, the second aspect in the human condition, that is action, what she talks about is participation in politics. And that is when the true sense of an individual is portrayed in the public life. And she talks about power and gives a very constructive notion of power than the earlier notions, which are more derived from power as in the sense of domination, control. So in the work Human Condition, she links modernity, action and power in a very new sense. In the work on the nature of revolution, essays on the nature of revolution, she talks about two revolutions and compares them. One is the French Revolution and the other is the American Revolution. She says American Revolution is a true revolution because it is fighting for freedom. It is fighting for liberties. It is fighting and solving the political questions in the public sphere. On the other hand, the French Revolution is trying to solve the material aspect or the economic aspect through the sphere of politics. So she praises the American revolutionary tradition and is critical on that way of the French Revolution. In the work Ishmael in Jerusalem, she talks about how the lack of judgment, thinking, willing, imaginative capacity on the part of Ishmael led to the banality of evil. That is how the crimes becomes faceless and how they become normalized and how they are ghastly crimes are performed not by people who have hatred or psychopaths, but out of the act of obedience towards political authority without applying their own sense of judgment of what is right and what is wrong. So we can see in the trial of Ishmael, she talks about banality of evil. Now let's understand the influences on Hannah Arendt. She is inspired by the Athenian tradition and how in Greece there was key participation in the sphere of politics, in the public life. So Aristotle talks about participation in politics and he says that the self-actualization needs are met only in the state, and that is because an individual participates in the state, participates in the political life, and the deliberative capacities of the individual are being utilized in this aspect. So she talks about participation of politics in a similar sense. She is also inspired by Kant's universal impartiality. She looks at how morality has to be separated. So we cannot have the moral individualism in the sense liberals are talking. Then she talks about Walter Benjamin and Martin Heidegger's concept of hermeneutics. What is hermeneutics? Hermeneutics is derived from the term Hermes. Who was Hermes? Hermes was the messenger of God, and he gave very secret messages which had to be interpreted. So it is the science, the art of interpretation. And we see how, political philosophers in the entire Western political thought have applied interpretation in order to understand the classics. So she also talks about importance of interpretation. That's why we see that when we have to understand Hannah Arendt, there is a need for a lot of interpretation about what she actually means to say. So hermeneutics is art and science of interpretation, and we know interpretation can be done through textual approach, through contextual approach, and a mix of both. She is also influenced by Sartre and Kierkegaard on the concept of existentialism. So Sartre does not believe in God and Kierkegaard believes in God. However, how do we understand existentialism? And then the second question arises is, how does Hannah Arendt uses existentialism in her philosophy? So existentialism, in common sense, an individual would understand is the fact of being, which means to exist. But existentialism is not the fact of being. It is the act of being, which means we as individuals should shape our life. We should have the freedom to shape our identity, to shape our authentic self. And we should not be guided what the society and what prejudices, stereotypes and others' essence or others enshrining their kind of values on us. We should actively participate, actively think and actively be what we can be, which means the best version of ourselves. That is existentialism. So humans not only merely exist by the virtue of being born, but human life is about shaping one's existence, how you truly can be, not what you are, but what you can be. And what you can be is only when you actively think, will and shape yourself. And you should have the freedom to do that, and nobody should create a barrier in this regard. So she talks about existentialism in many parts of her philosophy when she says about participation in politics, when she talks about action, when she talks about power and human togetherness. So all individuals should not be worried about essence, but they should be in the context of thinking, shaping, willing, judgment, and shape their own lives and become the best version. That is the authentic self. Next, let's move towards methodology. What is the methodology of Hannah Arendt? So phenomenon is something which means like what anything appears to us. So phenomenology is the study of appearances, which means, and it is something not only which is appearance objectively, it is appearance which means the experience we get from a phenomenon in a subjective manner. So any phenomenon can only be understood in a subjective sense, not only what it appears, not in an objective sense. Okay, so she applies phenomenology and says that we have to look at things in a more subjective manner and not how they are looking us or how we see them by the virtue of experience. Okay. So yes, phenomenon can be studied only subjectively and not objectively. It is not here. Okay. So by the direct experiences that an individual gets. So which school of thought can we say Hannah Arendt belongs to? So there are various arguments which say that she is a liberal thinker, and there are various arguments which say that she is not a liberal thinker. Some arguments say she can be a communitarian thinker because there are some aspects of importance of community and society, and some say that she is not a communitarian thinker. So truly, which school of thought does she belong to, and where can we classify her? That we will see later. So first, let's see on what grounds we can say that she is a liberal thinker. So what arguments make her a liberal thinker is she believes in rule of law. She believes in constitutionalism. What is constitutionalism? Constitutionalism is a liberal species, and it says limited government. There should always be checks and balances on power. So constitutionalism is not merely presence of constitution which structures the aspects of the state, but it is also about the practice, about the values, the ideals. And that's what Hannah Arendt also believes. She believes in rule of law, she believes in constitutionalism, and she believes in fundamental human rights that should be given to all individuals, which are inalienable and inseparable part of an individual. However, why she is not a liberal thinker is because she praises revolution. She praises the American Revolution. She praises how revolution is important if we have a totalitarian form of government. And she does not believe in the concept of representative democracy. She believes in the concept of participatory democracy that is truly substantive and not only a merely procedural form of democracy that we are looking at. Okay, so in some ways she is very much a liberal. In some ways we can say she can counter the aspects of liberal tradition. What makes her a communitarian thinker? So she emphasizes on civic engagement. She emphasizes less on the individual and more on the community and how important it is to be part and to be linked with the community. So she separates morality from politics. Why do we say she separates morality from politics? Is because she gives, there should not be too much emphasis on the individual. Individual should not shape all moral values as one thinks. In fact, it is, the whole sphere of society which shape values, morals. Okay, so she does not believe in moral individualism, which is the core of liberal philosophy. Now, why do we say she is not communitarian? Is because she says that form of any community, political community, should not be based on virtues like caste, religion, racial, ethnic ties. Okay, it should be by the virtue of respect towards the public sphere life. So it should not be based on solidarity or kinship kind of ties. But communitarians believe in kinship and community based ties which shape life of an individual. And she says politics does not mean about a shared conception of good. Okay, it is not a way to integrate individuals around a shared conception of good. So in this sense we say that she has certain threads of liberal thought and certain threads of communitarian thought. But however, the tradition which is truly belonging to Hannah Arendt's thought process is civic republicanism. And what is civic republicanism imply? Civic republicanism in its essence implies how people come together in the public sphere to solve their common problem, which means it is about participation in common life, participation in politics. So yes, she says that a republic is where citizens are virtuous and they place common good above the particular individual goods. She says the end of any political community is good life. And good life here means not any universal idea or contemplative idea like Plato talks. Good life means common interest. Okay. And she says that politics is the authentic expression, means politics acquires its dignity or its true version when citizens gather in the public space. So, deliberate matters of public concern, they participate in civic life. So, she says, for example, the phenomena of COVID. COVID was one of those phenomena which gave us the opportunity to come together and solve a common problem, a common interest by coming together. So, if we are not able to solve a common problem together, then things have failed. Okay? The chance that was given to us to take common decisions has failed. So yes, she talks about a strong sense of duty towards community. That's why we know that she says it is community which is more important and not individual, as the liberal philosophy places emphasis on individual. She talks about active citizenship, and she says the features of civic republicanism are equality, are liberty, are competition and participation. Participation where role of people in the political process, in the political process. Competition, role of political parties to promotion of also specific interest, and people come by being innovative, doing the best that they can to represent these specific interests. And liberty and equality. So these are the features of civic republicanism. And civic republicanism is not something which is a new phenomenon. It was also existing in the ancient Greece. That's why we talk about participation in the politics in the ancient Greece. So she takes from that tradition and puts it in the modern light. Okay. Now, because we didn't have concept of political parties and things like that. Now, let's understand her idea of modernity. So what is modernity according to her? Modernity means loss of the world. What is loss and which world is lost? Loss of the world means loss of the public sphere, loss of the political life, which means modern era is characterized by importance towards economic aspect of life, or to the private sphere of life. And the most ignored aspect in modernity, in the modern tradition, in the modern era, is people do not participate in public life with respect to their issues. They put it aside. There is not too much emphasis that has been there. Everybody is only talking of their private interest. And that is because of rise of consumerism, materialism, bureaucratization that has happened, technocratization that has happened, technology and its role, and how artificial things are being promoted at the cost of basic virtues that was important to live good life. Okay. So for her, modernity means loss of the world. So she talks about it in The Human Condition and the essays Between Past and Future. So, loss of the world, which means elimination of public sphere of action and speech. So, do you think she looks at modernity in a good light? Is it good for her? No, modernity for her is a negative phenomenon. It has brought negative consequences. Okay. Now, so why it is a concern? Because of the losses that have incurred due to loss of the tradition and rise of totalitarianism. Okay. So, which means it is a mass society. What is this mass society? Which means social ties, solidarity has weakened. Okay. And the relations are not personal, they are more impersonal. So, there is more official ties, there is more, the society which was one unit, the community which was one unit does not exist. Okay. So, we are in a mass society. Everybody is like a buyer and a seller. a consumer and a client. That is the approach. Okay. So why so? Because of rise of private world and private pursuit of economic interest. So there is an incessant, movement towards only fulfilling your economic aspect. Alright, so she says there is rise of ecos over polis, which means rise of the private sphere. And what activities we do in the private sphere? In the private sphere, so what does Aristotle say? So household is for what? Household is to meet economic interest, sexual interest. So we have family, we have wife, we have slave, we have property. Why all this? To fulfill that aspect. In the state, what is happening? In the state, there is public sphere. We deliberate. Deliberative capacities of those people who can do deliberation will come and solve the common problems. So for her, modernity is rise of ecos, which means rise of this private sphere rather than the polis, which means the public sphere. Okay? So there is victory of labor over work and action. So we'll come about these concepts, what she talks of labor, what she talks about work, what she talks about action. Okay. Now, so what stages of modernity she is talking? She is talking of two stages. One is from the 16th and the 19th century. So it has led to world alienation and rise of the social. What it led to? World alienation and rise of the social. And the second stage is 20th century, which is earth alienation and victory of labor over work and action. So what is world alienation? What is earth alienation? Okay. And what is rise of social? So when we understand that there is world alienation, okay, it means loss of experiences in the world. Loss of action, loss of participation, through which we establish ourselves. तो world यहाँ पे ऐसे geographical नहीं है, मतलब it is the surrounding world around us. So there is a world alienation, okay, and the rise of social. So firstly, when we talk about social, that means she is unable to account for the features of the modern world, okay. And what is this 20th century earth alienation? Earth alienation matlab individuals which are living on this earth, on this planet, are alienated from this planet, which means why this has happened? Because of technology. So we are moving towards space, we are producing artificial base. So technology की वजह से, ठीक है, how human is being separated from human life. How human is moving towards other planets, how biotechnology, how nuclear bombs, all these phenomena are creating problems. So she talks of earth alienation, victory of labor over work and action. This is the context. So this is her view with respect to modernity. Now let's move towards the concept of action. What is action? So she says there is two concerns she has. One is vita activa, where it is about a vital active life, and the other is vita contemplata, which is contemplative life. So thinkers like Plato will talk about contemplative life, idea is more important, and thinkers like Marx may talk about active life, which means more in the context of material being. So according to Hannah Arendt, she says that what is most important beyond material life or beyond thinking of beyond the universal idea, in both these contexts there is some problem. What is it that we need to think? I mean, what is it that we need to ponder upon? We need to ponder upon participation in politics. Okay, so neither the contemplative life, which is only about in imagination, and neither only active life in this sense, which means material life. Okay, no, both no. We have to have action. All right. So what is the meaning of action? Action is participation in politics according to her. So it is about human togetherness. It is a fundamental condition fundamental category of human condition according to Hannah Arendt. It is the highest realization of vita activa. Okay, and actually the whole concept of action is about establishing a participatory democracy. It is about people coming together. See, we know Nazism and Stalinism have come because people could not oppose authority. They could not oppose it. They, put legitimacy into such kind of leaders in times of fear, uncertainty and crisis. So if people were active, if people could protest against the rise of such authoritarian leaders, we would have not seen such kind of phenomena. That's why it is important that what is done, right? There is participatory democracy, and not only having put all the authority in the representatives and allow them to rule how they want. No. Because there is what chances of totalitarianism rising because of that. Alright? Now, so she says human activity, which is Aristotle's classification, is of three types. One is knowledge seeking action, theoria. Second is production seeking actions. And praxis is action, which means the true is, participation in politics. So even in active life, we do what? We meet our production desire also. We do material thing also. But the best, beyond contemplation, beyond material, there is participation in what? Politics, which is the highest realization of vita activa. Is this understood? Okay. Now, so she says there are three components. One is freedom, one is plurality, and one is disclosure of identity. So what is freedom according to Hannah Arendt as a component of action? So freedom here does not imply the freedom that is spoken by the liberals, which means, to do what you want to do, or, it is individual has the choice of doing anything. No. Freedom for her means doing something new, which means innovatively doing something, in a more different manner you do something, create something new. That is freedom. Okay, so she defines freedom in that sense. Alright. So it is the capacity to do something new which is unexpected, and action is realization of freedom, which is rooted according to her in natality. Natality matlab kuch naya karna according to Hannah Arendt. Okay, and she says each birth represents new beginning in the world. So when you act, there is a new birth to yourself. मतलब जब आप कुछ नया करते हो तो आप अपने आप का एक नया वर्जन रियलाइज करते हो. Okay, so probably look at Prime Minister Modi. Until he did something new, like becoming, first he was a CM and now he has become a Prime Minister. He wouldn't knew. So when he becomes Prime Minister, from an ordinary individual to this authority, he has given birth to a new self. Probably he himself didn't know that he has this version of being a leader. Only when you will do, you will know that yes, there is something which is different in you. Okay. So in this sense, we can give freedom example, like she says American Revolution. So why American Revolution? So pehle, what were people engaged in? People were engaged in only activities for the existence, for meeting their material life. But during the revolution, everybody gave up that kind of things and came in the public sphere to solve a common problem. So that is when it led to a new order. So that's why American Revolution is leading to beginning of a new age. So action का मतलब यहाँ पर क्या है? The freedom to do something new. It is rooted in natality, according to Hannah Arendt. Okay. Now, what is plurality according to Hannah Arendt? So action does not mean, see, when we are talking the very context of action, we are saying action का मतलब है कि participation in politics, है ना? वही असली aim है individual की life का, according to Hannah Arendt. So it does not mean that you have acted in front of, for example, a protest. You are merely sitting in a room and commenting about that protest and you are saying you have done action. No. You come in the public sphere, sit on the ground, you talk about the issues on ground, which means action is action when it is performed in front of various actor. प्लूरलिटी ऑफ एक्टर्स के सामने जब एक्शन किया जाता है, पार्टिसिपेशन किया जाता है, किसी भी प्रॉब्लम, कॉमन प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व किया जाता है, तभी ही उसका ट्रू असलियत वाला रूप रियलाइज होता है. ठीक है. सो शी सेज एक्शन ओनली इन प्रेजेंस ऑफ प्लूरलिटी ऑफ एक्टर्स who can judge the quality of what is being enacted. है ना? The fact that it is men and not man that live on the earth. So action is first to do something new. Action is only when you are performing it in front of multiple actors and not only, sitting in one aspect and talking about issues. No, you have to come on ground, you have to provide solutions. That is action. Okay. Then she talks about plurality. Plurality has two aspects. One is equality and one is uniqueness. अब ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है? अगर कुछ equal है तो unique कैसे है? So equality because all are humans. We all are humans. I am also human. So that makes us equal. And it is unique because I am different from you. So plurality, there are two aspects. One is equality. And one is what? Distinction also, right? Which is because every individual is different in how they perceive things, in how they do things, in the qualities that they have, right? So she talks about, so disclosure of identity happens when you perform action. Why? Because your true self will come out, है ना? So until you become a leader, you don't know whether you can be a good leader. You have some qualities. There is something that has been, there is some root which has, re-emerged again, okay? Or it is some new version of yourself, है ना? So she says disclosure of identity happens when you come. तो जब तुम public sphere में आओगे, तुम अपने आप के बारे में ये जानोगे जो तो शायद तुम्हें कभी पता ही नहीं था कि तुम्हारे में भी ये बात है. And I'm sure all the students who were participating in the recent protest after the unfortunate incident that happened in old Rajendra Nagar, everybody told me one thing, that ma'am, we have realized that we have some aspect which we never explored. We thought we are here only to study, but there is also some, like we studied about justice, but how to strive for justice, how to eliminate injustice, we came to know only because of participation in the protest. So disclosure of their true self, when they took up crowd management, when they formed committees, when they spoke with the crowd about the issue and the depth of the issue, they realized a new version of their self. That's what is action. Disclosure of identity. It will happen only when you are in front of 10 people. Okay, when you are talking about something, issues that are hurting you. Okay, so now human activity, she says, is of 3 types. Let's move towards that. So first is labor, where those aspects or those actions which are associated with, the ability to sustain human life, that is labor. What is work and labor? So you might think work and labor is same till date, but for Hannah Arendt it is different. Okay, labor means doing something creative, ठीक है, which means production of something. When you come in the workspace, है ना, that is labor, which means you are coming together in a factory and you all are producing something. That is labor. Okay, so activity which is tied to the condition of wellness. Work means, right, work means when you are coming together, and labor means what you have done, basic condition. For example, physiological process for her is labor, and work means when we come together and do something. And action is going beyond these. Humanity as zoon politikon, which means when we come together to talk about common problems, arrive at common consensus and common decision. Okay, so this is how the hierarchy is also there. So lowest is labor, then is work, and then is action. Okay, so I'll just read out a statement. She says, action is the only activity that goes on directly between men without the intermediary of things or matter, because work is matter associated. ठीक है, labor is physiological process, we have some basic necessities. So let's see her classification of human activity. She classifies it into labor, work and action, and it is a hierarchy in this order. In the sense, labor are associated with humanity as animal laborers, refers to all those basic things that we need for survival, like sexual needs, physical needs, food needs. Okay, when we talk about work, which means humanity as homo faber, it means creation, even though it is an artificial creation, but we come in togetherness with the world, which means either at the workplace we are together trying to produce something. Okay, so we come in association with other humans, and as together we do some production activity. Okay, so that is work for her. So you have to understand labor and work with the specific meanings that Hannah Arendt has associated. The third is action. So action is moving beyond work, moving beyond labor, and it is a mode of human togetherness which is implying participation in politics, which means humanity as zoon politikon, which is the best or the highest realization of vita activa, which means active life. So she says, beyond vita contemplativa, and even in vita activa will also have material aspects of life, but vita activa's highest self-realization, which means the highest activity, is humanity as zoon politikon. Okay, so the meanings and the hierarchy of these activities, I hope, is clear now. So the next concept is power. So what is power? We have understood the conventional meaning of power, and power referred to force, domination, getting things done even against the will of another. Okay. However, Hannah Arendt gives a very constructive meaning of power, and she says power is only when humans come together and act in concert, which means act together in common public life, when they act together in order to solve a crisis or a situation or a problem that they are facing. So it is about common concerns, it is about common decision making on those concerns. That is when you will see true power. According to whom? According to Hannah Arendt. So she doesn't say power means force or strength or domination. Power is, according to her, what? Power is when people act together in the public life. So she says capacity to act in concert for a political purpose is power, right? Now, so she says it is different from strength, force and violence. Strength is property of an individual. Power is, it is not only about individual, it is plurality of actors. So we've understood when we talk about the component of action, what did she say? She says it is about plurality. It is not action is not which has to be performed alone. It has to be done in front of multiple people, which means people as equal individuals and people also as unique individuals. So power for her is not only about the strength of an individual. Okay, it is about plurality of actors. So she distinguishes. Force is human creation, है ना? So, but for her, power is a natural phenomenon. Then violence is coercion, but according to Hannah Arendt, power is what? Concert, alright? It is consensus and persuasion. So she distinguishes between these other forms of power that we have conventionally understood. So the justification she gives is power is a sui generis phenomenon, which means a phenomenon in its own way. It is a product of action and it rests on persuasion, which means ability of others through discussion and debate. Right, so she is talking of consensus building as an exercise in the public political life. It is done by plurality of agents. It derives legitimacy on continuous basis. So it is not something that has to be stored and kept. It is legitimacy ऐसे नहीं है कि representative democracy में एक ही बार है. Right, when people vote and you are elected to power, but no, according to her, it has to be done on a continuous basis by all the bills the legislature brings and acts they become, and to what extent people follow these rules. this actually gives legitimacy to the actions of the representative. Okay? So she says it is deriving legitimacy is something on a continuous basis and independent of material factors, which means power does not mean how much wealth you possess. Okay, it does not mean how much property you have. Power means to what extent you utilize the common public consensus in order for common collective decision. All right. Now, what is her idea of citizenship? So, she also is talking of a very participatory idea of citizenship, just like Aristotle. So, she gives a very democratic, a very egalitarian and a very participatory aspect of citizenship. Okay, so she says that direct political participation, engaging in common action and deliberation, that is citizenship. Hai na? We understood that how Aristotle also says citizenship is not something by the virtue of being born or being a resident that you acquire citizenship in Athens or the Greek city state, right? It is about the functionality that you perform, which means that is the ability to participate, to what extent you do deliberation in the public affairs. Hai na? So, nature of politics and political life, she associates public sphere, space of appearance, it is a common world, right, where all of us come together and deliberate on issues. So, political equality, it is an attribute of citizenship and civic republicanism. That is a modern feature where all individuals are considered as universal and equal. So, that is the political equality that Hannah Arendt has associated. Let's just analyze this a little more in detail. So, she says, public sphere is constructed, it is man-made and artificial rather than natural. It is a cultural sphere where free political action could flourish. Okay. So, Arendt observes that political equality is not based on any set of natural rights, okay, but it is an attribute of citizenship which individuals acquire in public. So, yes, so in this sense, how Locke and the liberal view associates like it bases on the basis of natural rights that individual enjoy certain rights. No, it is also a duty-based aspect in the public sphere through which everybody will acquire that equality. Now, so obviously she distinguishes between public and private interest of individuals in this sense. So she believes also, she gives suggestions of proposing federated system of councils at the local level so that even people can participate. So more localized characteristic, more how we say governance has to be democratized at the local levels. That is what is a suggestion for people to be able to exercise the virtue of citizenship. Now let's move towards totalitarianism. What does she talk about totalitarianism? So in the context of totalitarianism, she says that totalitarianism is a phenomena which cannot be termed or associated with any other word. Okay, it is a phenomena which is using terror, violence and ideology, okay, in order to propagate and control the life of individuals. So she says it is a crisis of the 20th century. Now, so it is a reign of terror and violence. Why it has risen? So it is a result of political pathology, which means some conditions which are diseased conditions which lead to such kind of totalitarianism. Okay, so the cruelties that totalitarianism propagates, okay, they are something which are on an unprecedented scale, which means we cannot equate, there is no synonymous term only for which we can use for totalitarianism. All right. Now, so it is a very novel, completely different form of government that is being, violence is the means to an end, to achieve the end, and terror and ideology are also instruments in this phenomena. It aims to control conscience, not only body of individual, which means they will shape your entire process of thinking. है ना? That is what totalitarianism, so it is not only control of physical bodies, but it is control of what? Conscience. So atrocities are systematically organized, and how bureaucracy also plays a role in the perpetuation of this totalitarianism. Then she says it is not a movement of class, it is a movement of mass. And who are masses? See, according to her, ये totalitarianism phenomena कब होता है? When you create people, okay, people who don't have an identity for themselves, who don't respect themselves, and they are merely carried by the political authority. So she says masses are whom? Okay, masses are superfluous entities. They don't feel that they don't have a reason to exist. They don't feel that they can shape their own life. है ना? And they are very helpless set of individuals, and it is only in such situation that totalitarianism will arise. Okay, so she talks about pathological abnormal like conditions in which totalitarianism will be born. So she talks of how totalitarianism also occurs. There are stages. So first stage, strip people of the legal rights. So you kill the legal aspect of the individual, the juridical aspect of the individual, deprive them completely of rights, and you tell them only to perform duties. है ना? So there are no rights that will be given. That will be the first stage, which means all obedience towards the authority, complete submission, that you will not expect rights from the state. Second is moral aspect, so which means they will also try to control conscience of an individual. Okay, that is the second stage. So first they completely kill your legal self, then they kill your moral self and conscience, and yes, kill your spontaneity and individuality, which means your uniqueness, to be in the public sphere, show your authenticity, to exist how you want to exist. Okay, it will be only complete domination, that you are good for nothing. Whatever is told by authority is the best way of leading your life. So it is in this way that totalitarianism occurs as a phenomenon. So nature of the totalitarian state, it relies and acts on propaganda, which is false narratives. Okay, onion like structure, like layers, है ना? So why it is onion like structure? Which means as onion like layers, which means slowly we will be able to unearth things, है ना? It is not something we can very easily understand. As and when you will know that okay, there are these ways of thinking, what appears is different, but what is underlying is also very different. Fine. Then terror and ideology are the instruments that are done. So this is how totalitarian is being viewed according to Hannah Arendt. Now let's move to what she talks about judgment. See, what is the idea of judgment? Judgment is the ability to distinguish between what is right and what is wrong. So what does Hannah Arendt say? How does a person arrive at a ability to distinguish between right and wrong? So a person has two things. A person has the capacity to think, which means, right, and when you are thinking, what is the production in the mind? It is conscience. Conscience is the byproduct of your thinking. What does conscience tell you? क्या नहीं करना चाहिए? Which means it prevents you from doing wrong, but not necessarily conscience always gives the answer of what you should do. But what you should not do, that conscience says. Okay? So, to thinking capacity when it is over, right? And then your conscience will not prevent you from doing wrong. So first is when there is what? Absence of thinking on the part of an individual, that's when you fail to take the right judgment, and it prevents us from doing any wrong. And second is imagination, which means we are not able to anticipate what will be the consequences of our action. Which means today if I am killing so many people, what will it lead to? You are not able to anticipate it. Imaginative capacity is a very strong forward-looking capacity that individuals have. We can imagine, imagine today there is another COVID-like phenomena. What will be the world like? Or if AI starts to dominate us, what will be our world like? If we don't have that imaginative capacity, then we will not be able to control or restrict our activities. है ना? So we can anticipate consequences and other things. So when there is lack of thinking and imaginative capacity, that's when an individual is not able to do what? The right judgment. And he gives two models of judgment. One is that which is exercised by the actors who are performing, and one is those which is by the spectators. So we look at it from both dimension. When you yourself are doing some action by thinking and imaginative capacity, and what others also think you are doing. So this in the public sphere when you are performing, okay, so it is also the spectator model which works in judgment, all right. And when judgment fails, individual ends up doing what? So individuals does cruelty. So individual is doing cruelty not because the person is a cruel person, or it is mad person, or mental, or hatred is there. Even normal people commit crimes in the lieu of obedience towards their political authority, towards the leader they follow. So that's what has happened in the German case, okay, that Eichmann is doing these actions, okay, because he is only believing in authority. He is not able to anticipate. He thinks it is the rightful to obey the authority of the leader for the work he's performed. So even when bureaucrats, you know, they should not only abide by the legality, they also have to abide by morality, they also have to abide by the true values and ideals of constitution, है ना. वो spirit of constitution भी बहुत important है, not only the procedure laid down in constitution. और ये spirit है, मतलब you might also have to rise against a leader who becomes authoritarian or dictatorial. तो banality of evil का मतलब क्या है कि evil becomes faceless, evil becomes normal, okay, fine. So yes, evil becomes normal or banal. Why? Because there is thoughtlessness of individual. Why thoughtlessness? Because you're not able to think. Absence of imaginative capacities, which fails your judgment. There is no hatred which is actually leading to banality of evil. Normal beings also lack critical reasoning, and it is the influence of obedience towards authority which makes individual to do that. Then, so she is very much concerned of dignity of politics. What is dignity of politics? Which means politics aims for empowerment, politics aims for freedom, politics aims to bring in common consensus decisions on issues that are impacting us as a community. ठीक है? But how the whole authentic nature of politics has been ruined because of usage of ideology, by usage of false narratives, by creation of, you know, something like false news, right? Sorry, fake news. Okay, so all these are ways on how completely facts are replaced by alternative facts and false story is created. So she wants to restore dignity. Politics' purpose is to solve problems in common public life. So if we don't restore dignity of politics, then there is problem. ठीक है? So she says it is about empowerment and public freedom. Humane vision of politics she gives. We should not look at politics only in matter of domination, control, or the power variable that Machiavelli has spoken. Okay, it is about quality of the collective life, है ना, that politics aims. So she talks of negative role of propaganda and these things. Also, she talks about refugees and stateless people. She has also been stateless for a long run. So she says that there is something which is known as the right to have a right, and refugees lose, even people who don't have state, who are stateless, they lose the right to even have a right. So even in common present times, contemporary times, I would say that yes, how the statelessness and trouble of refugees, Syrian refugees, Ukrainian refugees, right, people in the Gaza, right, Palestinian refugees, how all of their life is ruined because they don't have an association known as state who could have improved and protected their rights. So she is very much concerned about whom? Refugees. So loss of right even to have rights, she says. So Hannah Arendt is very much relevant. We can see how participation in politics is very important. Today we see so many protests also that are happening in the world. We also see, you know, how citizens have become very active in governance. And if all these things don't happen, or people simply vote or elect leaders by virtue of obedience without questioning, then we are leading to the death knell of democracy. Okay, so we know how election results also prove to us that people who can think, if masses can think, masses can analyze, right, they will always question authority, not necessarily adhere to it. And how in the bureaucratic aspect also, how banality of evil is very, very important. So while performing even the role of security, okay, that you should not forget thinking, you should not forget imagination. Okay, so yes, Hannah Arendt is very much relevant even in the present times in terms of COVID, how people should have come together to solve the problem, or in terms of refugee crisis, in terms of how fake news, propagandas, all this is being done. So dignity of politics and its restoration, how she talks of power in more constructive terms. Okay, to utilize power and channelize it in the right direction. All right, so this is about Hannah Arendt. I hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you so much.